out and it was gone down. Suddenly I'm kind of cast into darkness.
Well, I think we are now reasonably well populated with many of the attendees who signed up today. I'm sure more will come in as we speak. So we'll get going. Thank you everyone for appearing today. Just to introduce myself to those who don't know me, my name is John O'Kelly. I'm a luxury travel journalist and editor, and also the founder of a consultancy and content agency for luxury travel called LUTE, which stands for the Luxury Travel Edit. And I was compelled to start these series of webinars because when lockdown commenced and so many people I was speaking to, clients, colleagues and friends, were in extreme distress, I felt it would be useful to provide a platform specifically for those of us who deal with luxury travel to talk about the unique concerns that affect our sector and to try and look at a practical way at a very targeted topic and see if we can come up with real utilitarian methods and strategies that can help everyone collectively just kind of weather this storm. And I was inspired specifically to do something relating to luxury travel within the UK and the unique composure of this summer season, given the restrictions we're all facing in travel, after writing a piece for The Telegraph about the differing fortunes that are being introduced to city and countryside hotels, with Britain's avoiding, it seems, London and major urban areas in favour of staying in the countryside. And of course, London and the likes aren't receiving very many international tourists at all. So it's a very distressing, challenging time for the British tourism industry. But additionally, I feel with this captive audience here, there are opportunities that will derive from that. You know, a lot of people who would have been hesitant to holiday in Britain this year, feeling that they know the country so well already, will be discovering different facets. I think we can develop really strong relationships with new consumers that can then be cultivated over the years to come. I think they'll be very valuable consumers that can throughout the year for many years to come as well. So in the midst of all this carnage, I think there's some positivity to be derived from the local tourism industry in relation to all that. And I hope that the panel today can help us try and make the most of it. So what I'd like to do firstly, oh, and I should say as well, I will be taking questions later. So if whoever wants to ask them, please populate the Q&A field during the seminar. And then towards the end, we'll take 5 to 10 minutes to go through that. And can I ask everyone to just introduce themselves and say what they're about? Andrew, could you start, please?
So hi and morning everybody. My name is Andrew Stembridge and I run Iconic Luxury Hotels, which consists of Cheating Glen in the New Forest, Clifton House in Berkshire, the Ling and Arms in the Cotswolds and Broadway, 11 Cadogan Gardens, a small boutique hotel in Chelsea, and then we have a new opening in October in Mayfair called the Mayfair Townhouse.
Great, thank you. Charlotte.
Hi, thanks so much, John. Thanks for inviting me to take part. So I'm Charlotte Keesing, I'm a director at Walpole. Walpole is the UK's Association of British Luxury Brands, and Cheating Glen is actually one of our founder members, I'm thrilled to say.
Thank you. And Ross?
Hi, John, and morning, everyone. I am Ross Pakes, Director of Product and Commercial at Abercrombie in Kent. I look after all the contracting of our outbound travel from the UK and Europe, and obviously now looking at the inbound business as well coming into the UK.
Thank you. And Lydia.
Hi, so I'm Lydia. I'm the Director of Food and Beverage at Rocco Forte Hotels, which is my family business. And two properties that we have in the UK are the Balmoral in Edinburgh and Browns in London, more specifically, but we also have 5 in Italy, and we've just signed another, and 3 in Germany, and Shanghai opening next year.
Thank you. I think now is a point for everyone in the British hospitality industry. We're all kind of reassessing what we stand for, what our brand identity is, and what we're going to do about the unique challenges that are arising this summer. I think often as well, you lose a sense of what's special about you. We can't see ourselves as others see us. So I'm interested, Charlotte, with your focus on how British brands are perceived internationally, how they compare to other brands, other luxury sectors internationally. What are the distinguishing characteristics of British luxury? What are the attributes that we should recognize are quite special and try to capitalize on over this year?
Thanks, Jones. It's a great question, and one that I understandably get asked quite a lot when, particularly on our overseas trips. And I should also say, actually, the Balmoral and Browns in London are also Walpole members, so it's terrific to be on the panel with you, Lydia, as well. I can answer the question 2 ways. So obviously, there's the bigger picture luxury industry perspective, which goes across all the kind of fashion, retail, beauty verticals. But I'm going to focus the question specifically on hospitality in the interest of time. But I do have 2 terrific reports, both on the characteristics of broader luxury and hospitality. And I happily share with everybody afterwards, because they are worth a session in their own right. So for me, and what's special, and what we talk about, what's special about British luxury, and I think for us, the Brits really understand what true hospitality is. And it's that kind of unique feeling of being hosted at a really, wonderfully warm and welcoming house, rather than necessarily a hotel, where the staff really feel like they're family and they work together as a family, that the needs of the guests are absolutely the priority, and there's flexibility, there's a warmth of welcome, but also, met with that respectful kind of familiarity too. Impeccable service as a given, but also some of that British eccentricity, just that kind of unique little bit of it, and then a little measure of kind of British humour as well. And for me, when you look at, say, our counterparts in France, or say Italy, and you think about their kind of 5-star hospitality offer, I think we're much more relaxed, we're more flexible, and warmer in our approach. That's what I'd see it as.
Yeah, we spoke already, Charlotte, and I liked, as we were developing that point as well, you mentioned the eccentricity, which is an obvious characteristic. I think somewhere like the Five Arms really exemplifies how idiosyncratic British properties can get away with being, how much fun they can be.
Yeah.
And also that sense of humour seems to be something
definitely.
that I wouldn't expect to find in New York, where I find, the service actually very unconvincing, or Paris. So it's something that we can get away with here as well. I also appreciate you mentioned that there's a respect for heritage, I feel, in the UK, but also an appreciation of modernising and moving forward and integrating those two things together. So it's a very dynamic, my perception of it is a very dynamic luxury sector compared to many countries. Now, this summer specifically, these British brands will be looking to market those facets to British consumers, maybe in a way they've never done before. So how do you think they can get that message across?
This is a terrific question, John, I have to say. I thought long and hard about this last night in my kind of preparation. And actually, I'm not with a British-based local audience, and that's who we're going to be talking to for the next, realistically 6 months, until we get news of air bridges and quarantine, that we're kind of watching with kind of one eye on a phone to see what the announcements will be today. I actually think it's maybe not about the notion of Britishness, but more about kind of locality and destination, and this idea of local for local. And people really, at the moment, this is really purposeful travel for those who are, leaving their homes, and those kind of enthusiastic travellers. They really want to go somewhere. This isn't just going anywhere, and they want to know about the destination. They want to know about what is in the location, what's special about the hotel. So I think there is, a given notion of Britishness and our type of service, but it's really about the locality and what that actually means and what the experience is going to be.
My sense in connection to this is that it's a real unique example to make the most resonant emotional impact. We're also desperate to reconnect with our friends and families. So the holiday I have this summer will be the most memorable I've had in years.
Yes.
I appreciate it more than ever. So I think there's a great opportunity for businesses there here in Britain to exploit that, or to capitalize on that, and always have that residual positive memory that they can, be the places back to year after year to relive those sentiments. Ross, I wanted to speak to you as well. I was really excited about having A&K aboard, because I know you've marketed the UK, the British Isles, to foreign clients for decades now, but this summer is the first summer ever that you've explicitly looked to lure a British consumer. And I believe this approach started before COVID hit. So now you've actually, you already have plans in place, which was great. But can you talk about why it's only now that you've looked to convince Britons to travel in their own country?
Yeah, I guess it's a good question again, John. What we found is what we were doing previously, prior to COVID, is we had some Middle Eastern clients that liked to come over to the UK, and they based themselves in London, but then they were looking for the great outdoors and getting to the rural retreats. And so we started marketing that a little bit more alongside what our inbound office was doing for our US clients. And as we increased the marketing, we found that actually it was getting picked up more and more by our UK clients, and they were interested more in a staycation. I guess they were starting to realise there was so much out there, with new properties opening up, new experiences opening up. And to Charlotte's point, they were actually interested that there was so much more on their doorsteps that they hadn't really explored before. And so, we conducted a survey previously, which we can come on to later, but we found that our clients are very much, with COVID happening, interested in travelling around the UK. And as we started to kind of look at some of these properties and expand on what our inbound office had already done, there was just so much out there. And it really is that rural, great outdoors experience that people seem to be looking for.
Yeah, My feeling in relation to that as well, you know, the crisis has left us all homebound, but actually preceding that, myself as someone who's lived in the UK for 18 years, this was to be my year to explore Brexit Britain. I'd specifically set 2020 aside to reconnect with the place that I've known all my adult life. And it was only last year that I went for the first time to the Scottish Highlands, and I was awed by how spectacularly beautiful it was. And I think this also ties in quite nicely with sentiments I've written about quite frequently in terms of sustainability. We don't want to be flying to New Zealand when we can just get the train up to Edinburgh or whatever, and then do that trip I did, drive to North Coast 500. So I think this will really be built on very nicely in 2021, when hopefully we're back to normal, but we'll have built those positive sentiments and those behaviors will still exist. So in relation to that, Andrew, you're in a brilliant position with iconic luxury hotels in terms of what the audience is now trying to pursue and build upon themselves. You've always been really popular with British guests, and I know you've got very high occupancy rates already in place for this summer. So you've managed to really appeal to the domestic market despite all the competition there is out there. Why do you think that is? What makes you stand out?
I mean, I think part of it is going back to sort of Charlotte's point about the sort of almost the authenticity of, you know, we're very lucky that, you know, certainly, and I guess for the purposes of this, I'll focus on our provincial properties rather than London properties, because there's a big divide in terms of demand there. But I think all, you know, Clifton, Ligon, Chewton, they're very well established brands, and although, you know, Ligon and Clifton have had a sort of their ups and downs in previous years, which we've now addressed, that they're very much back on the map. But, you know, Chewton Glen was the original country house. You know, it was created at a time when there wasn't even a UK or an international market. And I think over the years we've invested, and we've carried our guests with us over that time. We've really, I think we've appealed to quite a diverse and wide audience and age groups as well. So this, again, we're really tapping into the multi-generational now. But I think also location-wise, we are, we're within 2 hours of London, which does make a big difference. And although at this current time, clearly people are prepared to go sort of further for breaks, but it's always, I think one of the reasons we've got such a loyal following is we've really always tapped into that short break that, you know, and I know the West Country is in high demand at the moment, but it is that bit further. So I think
Andrew, sorry to interrupt you there. I wanted to go back to something you said at the start. You described your properties as authentic, and that's a word I hear all the time. It's easy to say, but what does it actually mean? What makes you authentic? Because a lot of hotels out there are providing what they see, you know, present as authentic experience that to me seem quite contrived and trite.
I think because our properties, especially, you know, I mean, well, Ligon Arms was actually, unusually, it was actually built as a hotel 600 years ago. It was built as a coaching inn. Chewton Glen started off as a small private house, but it's evolved over time. And I think a lot of the competition that's come over the years, and one of the things I'm really proud of in terms of market share, we've continued to grow market share despite the fact there's countless competitors. And although, you know, you look at the market and there's so many options that deliver, you know, basically the same that we do, but I think the Brits, they're not as interested in brands, and I think it's very hard to create something, as you say, it becomes a little bit contrived when you try and create a country house, because it has all the attributes. It's almost, you know, if you sort of, it's like a sort of Aston Martin versus, you know, perhaps a sort of a Japanese equivalent that has, it's actually fundamentally, it's more reliable, it's better value for money, but it just doesn't have those layers in there. And there's something that people, the sort of, I think the Brits, that, you know, they love something that, as I say, they can feel the sort of the patina and the layers that have built up, and the quirks as well. You know, it might be, you know, it might be creaky floorboards, it might be lack of air conditioning, it might be, as I say, you know,
well, actually, in relation to that, I know you said previously that British travellers are a little bit more comfortable with the idea of a place being a bit worn in, a little bit used, just a comfy environment rather than something that's overly slick and polished. Even very wealthy travellers are just appreciate a more laid back, pared down aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot is, and although I you know, as a hotelier, I really admire the international brands, which, you know, clearly if you're rolling something out worldwide, you almost have to sort of create something which is, you know, it's quite repetitive. But I think for us, our success has been based on the fact that we just point our team in the right direction, and actually what we've created is very much based around our individual properties, rather than trying to create brand recognition touch points, which people, you know, if you're selling an international brand, people are looking for that, but it does dilute, it does dilute the offering, you know.
Thank you. Well, it's speaking of hotel chains with broader international footprints, I think Rocco Forte has that nice sweet point where it's still very intimate and small scale and doesn't seem unwieldy. Some of the major international brands I do find myself feeling a little bit bored by right now. So Lydia, I wanted to ask you about the more unique perspective you have as well with your British properties being based in major international cities. The impact the current situation is for you, how it relates to hotels, but also specifically with your restaurants and bars, which is what you manage. I know you've always looked to the local market. So can you talk generally about the hotel situation, but then how you're engaging with local communities, the work you do specifically with your restaurants and bars?
Sure. I mean, as it's quite clear that, you know, the city, I mean, staycation is a lot about escaping the cities now and about getting away from what you're used to. And so we struggle particularly because Browns and Balmoral, obviously we have these two city locations. And in the past, the US has been 37% of our revenue at Browns and 41% of our revenue at the Balmoral. So we're really reliant on the American market. UK is only 11% of our revenue at Browns and 33% at the Balmoral. And actually the UK has a lot more room nights with us, but has less spend because they're not traditionally the highest spending demographic for us. US, Middle East is higher. So I think we're looking at a big challenge in terms of the hotels, of how we can draw now this local business. And in a way it's a great opportunity because as a Brit myself, as a Londoner myself, having lived there my whole life, I think there's still so much in London for me to see and to experience, and we haven't, you know, we don't take that opportunity as much as we should. Same with Scotland. I've always been talking about how, I mean, we talked about how I wanted to go to Ireland, but same with Scotland, you know, the Five Arms. I'm desperate to go to Glen Eagles. And so I think there's an opportunity to do some collaborations with other local businesses and try and work together a little bit better. I know at Balmoral, we are talking to Glen Eagles about things that we can do together, but also just to the local sites. I mean, you don't have to do anything crazy different to attract a British person to Edinburgh. There are many who still haven't seen Edinburgh Castle. You know, there are many who haven't been to the National Gallery in Edinburgh, which is extraordinary. So just trying to work with those sorts of organisations. In London, we're working a bit closely with Bicester Village and Blenheim Palace to work with their databases and see how we can do collaborations. But then on the F&B side, it's slightly different scenario because I've always targeted local market, as you said. And for me, the Donovan Bar at Browns is all about London customers, Mayfair customers. Brasserie Prince at the Balmoral, which we did with Alain Roux, is about local Edinburgh people as much as it is our hotel guests. And Number One, for example, we're now opening on the 1st of August at Edinburgh, which in Balmoral, which is our Michelin-starred restaurant. We're just starting with the weekends and seeing how that goes. And so far, we're fully booked on the weekends just with local Edinburgh business. So that's a bit easier, and that's something that we can, you know, work with. And in fact, I'm opening the Donovan Bar on the 20th of July, much before we open Browns, because hoping that there'll be a bit of local business.
It's interesting, I'm just removing the second Lydia Forte that's just appeared on the screen there, if you can see it. One of you is totally sufficient, thank you very much. Interesting you mentioned collaboration. That's something that I want to speak to all of you about, because we've seen through the trauma that's emerging now, that actually people throughout the travel industry are reaching out to each other, the webinars we're all participating in frequently is another example of that. And it's been one of the positive things to be derived from all this, I feel. Lydia, you told me about a very nice local example that you're doing in the periphery of Browns with different restaurant partners. Can you tell us a little bit?
Days of talking about it, but Albemarle Street, where Browns is, has become a great dining and drinking destination for Mayfair. It's really developed. So we're trying to work with our local restaurants there, and the possibility of having seating in the street and to turn Albemarle Street into a more pedestrian kind of street party vibe. And on the hopefully we'll do a joint launch with Isabel, which is the restaurant next door to us, for the Donovan Bar with the Donovan Bar on the 20th of July. Do something like that, but really just try to get a bit of atmosphere. I think Londoners, I think Brits in general are desperate to get out and have experiences again and socialize, and especially outdoors. So if we can sort that, I think it will have a bit of legs.
Yeah, we were speaking about this as well. Despite being lucky to travel all over the world, what I'm most excited about is just having a pint in a pub. So we're all just so desperate to reconnect that way. I'm sure there are opportunities to measure and to take advantage of. In relation to that, the idea of a summer street party on Albemarle Street sounds really, really nice. You're also trying to engage with local communities. Does that mean reaching out if there's a local club or something like that, that you might have enticements for them to have a monthly supper with you, or how would that manifest itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's something that we've always done, having sort of ambassadors, as it were, from local businesses, offering specific discounts to regulars, to friends and family, to people that are in the area, and then collaborating with kind of local focus groups. In Edinburgh, we're looking at sort of new opportunities with, for example, local distilleries, and collaborating with them, so that our Scotch whiskey bar, has this amazing number of whiskies, and so trying to locals the chance to do something that maybe they haven't done before and go and visit them as well. Reach out to their customer base too. So yeah.
So yeah, it's something I'm hearing constantly: more collaboration, broader support, and eradication of this sense of competition that we all need to pull up each other and try to get through this and hopefully build more fruitful relationships in the future. Charlotte, you have many good examples of that, because I know that's one of the things that Walpole facilitates. You've got over 270 members?
Yes.
And you don't just deal with hospitality, you deal with fashion, jewelry, and the like. So have you maybe in your vast experience got some examples of previous cross-pollination or
Yes.
Cross-sector brand partnerships that exemplify or illustrate how we can maybe do better collectively to work together?
Yeah, and the challenge with this question is actually just picking a few, because there are absolutely, hundreds across our sector and brilliant examples. And actually, when it's with the right partners, executed well and communicated correctly, it's phenomenally successful. I'm just going to pick out a few, but there's lots I'm not covering, and there are absolutely
Sure.
loads.
Doesn't make an exhaustive list.
I know, it's a hard question. I think some really exemplary kind of examples of the last couple of years. I think Belmont's partnership with London Philharmonic, I think, was incredibly impressive. It was, going outside and finding, an entirely different kind of organisation to partner with, but that chimed with the guests' passions and desires around music and culture. But then translating that and taking that out from, the London location and taking that to the kind of Okavango Delta in Botswana or to the Iguazu Falls, a really kind of amazing, kind of creative, imaginative way of the partnership, but then how do you communicate it? A lovely one for tying in with families. This is not summer related, but it was one that, particularly appealed as a mum to a Lego mad 7-year-old, was the Savoy's partnership with Lego for their Christmas decorations last year. Also, they did a terrific Tiger Who Came to Tea afternoon tea. So really helping to engage that younger generation who's incredibly influential now in actually family decision making.
Yeah, they're in charge.
Really
what did they do with Lego?
So they did sorry, I think my sound went, didn't it? They did decorations with Lego last year, and right. So all decorations in the property were Lego Christmas decorations, and they were incredibly creative, and even as an adult, really impressive. And my son loved them. I can't come to the Verve Clico picnics down at Chewton Glen. They sound absolutely wonderful. You know, the dream of getting on a bike and cycling down to the coast with a perfectly prepared picnic. And then a really kind of enduring one, I think, that's really stood the test of time is the Berkeley Pret-a-Porter, and that collaboration with fashion designers to really, you know, connect Berkeley to the fashion pact. But that's
all the best ideas seem very simple afterwards, don't they? But it works so well.
And obvious,
They get so much attention in every single iteration of that concept. It's great. Ross, you also are working quite hard, I think, to broadcast to people, British travellers, what's special about their own country. So I assume you've got lots of local partnerships or surprising things that people wouldn't necessarily expect. Can you give examples of some of the experiences you've launched for British travellers this year?
Yeah, so we've, I guess one of the nice things about the Staycation is that there's so much on your doorstep that you don't know about. So we've been just trying to bring that to life, and to Charlotte's point on the kind of what the client is looking for, they are looking for you to take them beyond the norm. You know, they think they may know a particular county, but actually you've got to then bring that experience to life. And for the UK client, they really do want that insight and that specialist knowledge, which is why they come to a tour operator rather than necessarily booking it directly. So Scotland, we've all mentioned, you know, big selling point about Scotland, it is the great outdoors. It's got so much to it, the landscape. So we've been looking at things as well, partnerships with distilleries, so opening up some access to private whiskey distilleries, so getting to taste the finest whiskey straight from the cask. We've got access to private museums and to private houses. So it's just trying to find a point of difference and really appeal to the UK client, because they may see on the face of it that they know what they want from a destination, but you've really got to try and, you know, get beneath the skin of that particular area. So we've got a number of experiences and we're still fine tuning them. So we're working with a number of partners to see what the opportunities exist, because we're finding more and more interest is coming in now. I would say that Scotland is high on the list. It seems to be the one that appeals to a lot of people at the moment. Ireland as well is getting quite a lot of popularity, I think. You know, we are finding that the
I'm a proud Irish fan, but we'll just keep to Britain. I just have to make that geographic distinction.
But yeah, very much Scott.
Things to do in Ireland, just drop me an email after. We'll pick that conversation up separately. But what's interesting, though, I've had individual conversations with all of you and also speaking to various people about this topic. Nobody ever mentions Wales. And also, I contacted Visit Wales to let them know that this was happening and asked them if they wished to participate, or didn't hear a word back. So I've always felt it's a destination that doesn't really do itself much favors in terms of marketing. Is it a good place to go? Is there something we're missing out on there? Does anyone have any opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. My apologies, because my inbound office were telling me Wales. You've got to talk about Wales, because it really does appeal. Like the Pembrokeshire coast is absolutely stunning. There's a huge amount of history there. You know, steam trains, there's a lot of kind of fantastic places that you can visit, and great for family adventure as well. So one of the things we're talking about is multi-generational travel. You've been away from your family, and Wales really does appeal. So I will be shot down for forgetting Wales when I was just talking specifically about Scotland, but it is absolutely stunning and a great coastline. Everyone talks about Dorset and wanting to go to Bournemouth, and you see it in the news a lot at the moment. So Wales does have that, absolutely, and some great properties down there as well.
Yeah, I would say their marketing strategy is quite sluggish, but you know, maybe it shows for those of us who want to escape the more obvious places. There are options there that haven't yet been fully discovered. Andrew, in relation to this, you want to showcase the best of Britain, but you want people to stay around your properties. So are there local partnerships you've cultivated, or different engagements you have with the direct community surrounding your properties?
Yeah, and again, we've always really done that. And I think actually probably this year more than others, people are going to be, I think, checking in and actually then not checking out. I think people are going to, partially because maybe they won't be able to get bookings at local restaurants, and maybe some of the local attractions aren't open yet or not open fully yet. So I think on the whole, we're finding that people are actually looking for us to provide all of their meals and more of their entertainment. So, you know, Charlotte mentioned the bikes we're doing a pop-up pizza garden at Chewton, and we've got sheep that we never used to have and things like that. But I think for us, those local relationships are really, really important. And I think that's one of the things that we've maintained throughout. I mean, I think this whole idea of working even harder together I mean, I think our industry is very collaborative anyway, but I think we are talking to each other more, and we are very conscious that we've tried very hard to make sure that, especially small local suppliers and things, it's really important that we've supported them throughout this, throughout this process. So, without question, it's really, really important. And I think it's a trend that we've seen in all in hotels in general in the UK, that people, when they're staying, they want local food, they want insider knowledge that that come through like ANK in terms of that, or actually it can come from local knowledge in terms of the hotel having a contact that isn't something you can find on a website, or it's not on the normal tourist trail.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned as well. I think traditionally with your properties, I would assume that people from Britain would go there for a weekend away, and now that we are being held captive in Britain, which is a great place to be held captive as these things go, potentially they're foregoing their week-long, 2-week-long summer holiday and staying with you for an extended period of time. Are you seeing that? And are you introducing these new experiences then to ensure that they feel occupied throughout the period? Is this a strategy you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the length of stay has probably doubled year on year. And people, ordinarily, we were there for people's second and third holidays. We were never their primary holiday. That was for going generally overseas. But there's so much pent-up demand for all the Easter holidays, all the half-term holidays that never happened, all the celebrations. So they're all coming in, but also all the international holidays which are getting cancelled now, or people don't feel comfortable, even if they can, they're not comfortable going through an airport or on a plane. Yeah. So we're very much. So I think we're trying to provide as much as possible for them, and also from a commercial perspective, we're trying to capitalize on the fact that we have got them and they're a captive audience, and clearly we've got a lot of catching up to do financially. So we need to try and encourage them to spend as much money as possible with us. It's really important.
Yeah, in terms of spending money, I'm wondering as well, and maybe Lydia, you'll have thoughts on this too. Pretty much so few people are going abroad for their proper holiday this year. So with the challenges the luxury sector is facing and people not going for their 2-week holiday to Thailand, do you think there's an opportunity for the luxury sector to engage with a consumer base that traditionally would have felt they couldn't afford a luxury hotel stay or a luxury restaurant visit in the UK, but now will have some budget set aside that they might redirect to that type of experience?
I mean, I'm hopeful that that's the case. I think it's possible. I think people in general are, having been in lockdown and having slowed down with everything, are more aware of how hectic and busy and frenetic things were before and how much was going on. And I think people are willing to do less but do better quality things, and really spend on an experience which is going to be something that they couldn't have at home, which is really different to what they might have had at home, which is a bit more luxurious, where they're getting, where service is really important and quality is really important, and they just want it to be special. And instead of doing as many trips and flying abroad, and maybe it is about longer stays in a place which you might not normally have spent on before, but you're willing to now. I mean, maybe that's what we're seeing with number one, for example. I think definitely for dining that's the case. People have become much more, I think people have become much more knowledgeable about food and about eating. Everyone's sort of got used to cooking at home and buying good produce, and they're more aware of what good produce is and what good food is. And
well,
so I think
I'm really curious about that. I think the British consumer is very savvy when it comes to what fine dining is anyways. But yeah, we've had this experience where we've been completely self-reliant for months. Do you think when people revert or return to going back to restaurants, we're going to look for very elaborate dishes that, because we're even more inspired now, or will we want a complete return to simplicity? How is dining going to shift as a response to what we've just gone through?
I think it's quality in whatever form that takes. I think it might be that it's fine dining, it's gastronomic cuisine, something that they wouldn't make at home. It might be that it's more exotic cuisines, things that you wouldn't feel confident doing in your own kitchen, or you don't have the ingredients, or you don't know about. It might be just about service and having atmosphere again, and having a bit of theatre when you go out. And I think there's something about, we probably all know how to make a martini, but there's something about going to a bar and having a bartender dressed up, having a nice conversation with him, making you the perfect martini in front of you, the theatre of that, and then having it poured in beautiful glassware and having all the silverware and all the trimmings and the nuts. It's just, I think it's about the experience and the atmosphere as much as it is about you know, just the product itself now. That's going to be so much more important.
I can just see in the comments that Jenny Holman is very effusively agreeing with everything you said, and also makes the point that we won't need to do the washing up after, which is becoming hasn't it? You know, I'm having broader conversations with people as well about, you know, what the restaurant space will look like. I'm really heavily interested in this as well, because I've missed the atmosphere. Are you seeing is there going to be a really big space? Are there going to be perspex screens? How are we going to ensure that it really does feel like a lovely place to be in light of the constraints you're being faced with?
Yeah, I think, sorry, was that to me or was that to Charlotte?
It was, yeah, sorry.
I think what we're trying to do is to abide by all the regulation, local regulation, and of course, make sure that our hygiene standards are higher than even they were before, but trying not to change the offering too much. Because what people want is something that feels luxurious. People want to forget a bit that COVID is happening. I think people want to go back to a little bit of normality. And so as far as we can, yes, all of our waiters will be wearing masks. All of our bartenders wear masks, but we're lucky that our tables are already quite distant in space. We have that benefit of space, and trying to keep, you know, nothing disposable, and not throwing things away and having disposable menus, but cleaning them down properly, and yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, I was in Rome. I snuck out to Rome for 4 days on the when they opened on the 3rd of June, and before we had quarantine in the UK, because our hotels were opening there, and I wanted to go and do some work, and also see my grandmother who lives there. And they had already opened the restaurants, and the surprising thing was that, yes, you had to wear masks indoors. Yes, there were all these sort of careful measures, but things felt pretty normal. And I think things will feel normal as soon as we, you know, on the 4th of July, quicker than we think. So I hope, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Just to finish up on food and drink for the time being, one thing I know that you introduced previously into Rocco Forte Hotels was the Nourish concept of healthy eating. Can you explain that slightly? And I'm just wondering, is that something that will be emphasized more and more in light of our presumed enhanced focus on our physical and mental and emotional health and all those things going forward?
Well, I really hope this will be a positive coming out of it. I think, as I said already, you know, people being more comfortable cooking at home and not going out for their meals, and you know, that's already one step closer to healthy eating, healthy living. But yeah, so Rocco Forte Nourish was this program that we offer in all of our hotels, and basically to have healthy options available at every touch point. So you have healthy minibar snacks, dried fruits, and you know, organic dark chocolate, which is not too much sugar, and proper fruit juices, vegetable juices, rather than like Coca-Cola. So you can ask in advance to have that done for you, but also healthy options at breakfast, healthy options in the bar. And because as travelers, I think my sister and I started it together, and as travelers, we were always trying to be healthy, and then you'd get to your hotel room late at night and you were starving because you hadn't eaten, and you'd like demolished the minibar. So to be able to replace that with something healthy, and we found that works with even the most unlikely customers. Like in Frankfurt and Villa Kennedy, we had the biggest take up of it with essentially male corporate travelers. So I hope that will happen, and I think more and more anyway, that was a trend that was already happening, but I think it will be important to have more vegetarian options on menus, healthier options on menus.
I'm just recalling you spoke about temptation hotels, and when I stayed in your Hotel de la Ville in Rome last year, just shortly after opening, it was really wonderful, but they had like a cake room or something for breakfast, and I just love that Italian indulgence. So I personally really, really welcome eating badly on holiday, but you know, having a little bit of variety available is, I guess, a good thing for other people.
Sadly, no breakfast buffets for the moment in the hotels, but they'll
eventually hear that. Yeah, but hopefully we can get back to it soon. And Charlotte, I wanted to ask you as well, you know, we spoke about potential trends emerging in food and drink, but something that Walpole does is a mentorship scheme. And I guess as part of that, you're constantly looking at what the future will hold, or what young clients are introducing, or so it gives us a kind of snapshot potentially what luxury might look like in 5 years. Is there anything that, you know, a consequence of what we're enjoying right now? Is there something that you see emerging in the years to come that maybe will be a positive from all this?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we've actually covered a lot of them, you know, already. And I'll share it to you, John, and if you want to share it with the broader audience, a piece of work we did that's called The Art of British Luxury Hospitality. It was a report produced with a brilliant brand agency called Notable, and we did it for a trip that we took to the US last year, which Andrew was with me on, a kind of a big promotional trip, which included promoting British luxury hospitality to US customers. Let me kind of reflect on some of the things we've said. And a lot of these trends we were seeing pre-COVID anyway, and it doesn't seem that they've gone away or altered, they're just going to accelerate. One is this piece around kind of nature and simplicity and reconnecting to nature, and that plays so well to so many of our rural and country hotels and properties. Also, to your point, Ross, you know, places like, you know, Cowdrey, these wonderful kind of private house estates, as well as the hotels. And something that you all mentioned, I think it's come across from everybody, is this desire and appeal for Scotland. And it's no wonder that Scotland's doing so well. It gives you all of that kind of, you know, nature and ruggedness, and that kind of, you know, the opposite of busy city lives is absolutely there. So I definitely think of nature and simplicity. Aligned to that is also the piece about well-being that's come across, be that from nourishing food that nourishes and restores the body, but also the spa. But then outside of the spa, what's the bigger kind of, you know, living life well piece? And that might include some elements of education, life development and learning as well. Something that Andrew's kind of touched on several times we've spoken is this kind of human to human service, you know, less about this kind of subservient service and more about a more respectful kind of equal footing. We're certainly seeing this kind of mindful and more purposeful travel, and that's translating into those longer stays, much more considered process in terms of where are we going, why are we going. And then a responsibility through one's own travel, but also expecting the travel companies and the hotels to also be making a positive difference to their locations as well. So it's a partnership between traveller and also where their location of where they're going to be responsible about travel. And then lastly, of the kind of top tier, I think this multi-generational travel we've all talked about as well. Families might have all been holed up together at home, but we might not have been having that much fun, and we want to travel together and actually have a really wonderful time and reconnect together, rather than it being about homeschool and the stresses of work. And then, you know, traveling with grandparents, uncles and aunts as well.
In relation to that point, I'm just so, I don't want to sound dismissive, but really bored of hearing about COVID. You know, in these conversations we're having about travel, I really want to return to the joy of what it offers, you know, the opportunity to reconnect, you know, the emotional value of that. And speaking from a journalist perspective, and I make this point every webinar, I just want the message to move on a little bit. I'm bored of writing about it. So I really want to look to you. There will be safety provisions in place, but what about the reason we're in this industry in the first place, the huge emotional heft it has, the intrinsic value it provides, and the good it provides? You know, we've recognized that more than ever. So I'm really, really keen for the conversation to move on a bit. Charlotte, you also mentioned about, you know, contributing to the local community and the responsibilities there. And I just see, I'll take questions properly later, but I see Sally Shalam, who specializes in UK travel journalism, has asked, with so many industries suffering through lockdown, but simultaneously a resurgence in interest in British tradition and craft emerging, how can luxury brands and hotels support small local industries? We've spoken a little bit about the partnerships that are already in place through iconic luxury hotels, for example, Andrew, and what you've done, Lydia. But is there more that we should be doing to reach out to these brands now? Or is this the time to set up an organization or some type of partnership industry-wide? Do you think, does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Andrew, you go, sorry.
I think it's a movement. It's a movement that's already started, and it's nothing to do. And I guess it's linked to Brexit. It's probably been driven even more by COVID. But I think people want local people, and I think that's and local is different. And I think this sort of globalization of brands is a complete reverse of that. And I think people, anything we can do to cultivate that, and also cultivate local staff with stories they can tell. And going back to Charlotte's point about this human, we're in the hospitality business, and I everyone on the screen is really good at that. And I think we need to make sure, so your point about people are bored of COVID, we're talking, yes, we've got all the new protocols, but we're talking about hospitality, not hygiene. you know, and find there has to be physical distancing, but not social distancing, because social distancing is, you know, we need to reconnect with our guests. And it's funny, I mean, I was nervous, you know, today, I mean, I'm at the hotel, and this is the first real wave of tons of people coming back in, staff of the team coming back in. And I was nervous that they'd be a bit lethargic, and, you know, they've all been on furlough. And honestly, it's so exciting, because the energy and I just kind of feel that it's going to be, as I say, I think COVID will be forgotten, you know, without question.
Yeah, I think that phrase you've used, physical distancing rather than social distancing, I wish we phrased it like that initially, because it's such a powerful way of conveying what we should be aiming for now. You know, we may have to keep our distance physically, but we still need to engage with each other, don't we? Ross, I think you're in a very interesting position because you engage with the entirety of Britain, and you've clients who are now being exposed to more unconventional parts of it potentially. So what's the feedback you're getting from your British guests now that they are about to start exploring the country? What are the surprising things they've turned out to want to pursue, or do they particularly seem to love?
Well, to be honest, it's a range, I guess. They're just looking for, certainly the feedback we've had so far is they just want to escape. They want to be with their family. And I think it's a really, really valid point on the social distancing, because, you know, even in my house, my wife is saying, I just want to get out and talk to more people. I love spending time with you, but I just want to talk to other people and get back to that socializing in a pub or in a park with friends. And I think, you know, that's what we're finding. And it may be in a hotel. It may also be, you know, we spoke before about some of the private homes that we contract, that they want to just get away and be in their own space. It's that privacy as well, but also some people look for more that social aspect. So we're getting some weird and wonderful requests. Some of the stuff that we have started to see coming in, and actually it came in from our US clients prior to COVID, was people looking to retrace their family steps and looking at their family heritage and their ancestral lines and finding out where the history is from. And we had a great itinerary where someone did that in Scotland. It culminated in the family all getting together on the Royal Britannia, having a great meal and getting the family tartan. And I've, you know, even friends and family of mine are starting to look at that more and more. And I think it's a great, you know, in travel, we look at new opportunities, and, you know, we go with what clients are asking for, but also where we think trends are coming in. And that was quite an interesting one that we've heard of recently.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Ireland has really shrewdly exploited nostalgic Americans, and every summer we get so many people from Boston, for example, coming back to look at a castle that supposedly their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather used to live in. And it's interesting that Britain hasn't really capitalized on, you know, the incredible history that's here to the same degree. So I would see that as a definite point that could be built upon more and more over the years to come. I know as well, you also did a survey as you were trying to develop this approach to how you market Britain. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we conducted a survey in May. We were obviously listening to many forums and many marketing updates of what clients were looking for, but we wanted to actually hear it from our own database and understand what they were looking at. Now, obviously, that might have changed slightly because the survey was done back in May, but very much top of the list for people who wanted to travel to was Europe first and then UK. And that really started the wheels in motion, albeit we all always recognise there was an opportunity there, but it certainly started the wheels in motion to say we really need to kind of accelerate this quicker, this staycation opportunity. So we were asking them what sort of travel they would do, the elements of touch points that they would want on their holiday as well, the insights that they expect. And what came across quite interesting from a luxury perspective is, you know, it wasn't necessarily about offers, it was more about the trust and the flexibility to travel again. And, you know, everyone's worried about not being able to travel or suddenly getting COVID and then having to cancel their holiday. So there was different stuff that came through, and it was quite interesting. We took quite a few learnings from it, but very much the biggest was the opportunity to travel around the UK.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned offers there, and actually this is something I had a concern about the luxury sector, the temptation for many people. I know there are a lot of people representing various clients across the country in the audience today, and I'm sure they're having conversations about do they need to discount drastically this summer to just try and get through it. But what's the longer term consequence of that in terms of tarnishing the brand as a proper luxury entity. I want to ask Andrew and Lydia about that. Is there a temptation now to go in with heavy discounting or very extravagant offers? How should we navigate this aspect of trying to lure customers in during a very, very challenging summer? What have you got to say about that, Lydia?
Well, I think in our industry, it's notoriously difficult to get rates back up once you drop them. And I think given what people are trying to, wanting to experience, if they want to offer that quality, and that it's difficult to drop rates because it just doesn't make any business sense. So rather giving sort of friends and family rates to specific targeted groups, but also we've got something called Rocco Forte Escapes this summer, where you can travel and have a free upgrade and have a free breakfast, so added benefit rather than discounting. And also travel without limit. So we're making sure that you can change the hotel, change the date, have fully flexible booking. So offering value in that way without necessarily trying to drop rates too much.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm much the same. Again, fortunately, in our provincial properties, again, it's it's very different when you're in the cities, and the demand just isn't there yet. I mean, certainly, so we haven't had to do a lot. I mean, we've been, in terms of what we have done to drive sort of length of stay, we did run a 4 for 3 offer for a while. We're not running it now because, again, the demand is there, and that was to try and lengthen stays. And also, obviously, it gives us a benefit of incremental spend on the fourth night. So that's worked very well. And then other than that, it's just adding value. What we never want to do is for people to be able to, the consumer to be able to actually understand what the room rate is. So even if the actual rate has been discounted, by packaging it up with, dinner, bed and breakfast packages, that sort of thing, with, people can't see it. So they're getting more value, but we're not actually, it's not a direct discount from their perspective. And I think that within our sort of luxury of brands, that's something we never want to do, is being seen to actually reduce our rates, because as you say, there's no going back. And I think ultimately there's a demand for people aren't looking to stay and go off site to other restaurants. They want to stay, once they've checked in, once they're comfortable, once they feel they trust and they're safe, they want to hang around anyway.
Well, that's connected to my next question. We have this captive audience this summer. We're going to be exposed to customers who didn't necessarily want to stay in Britain this summer. They are kind of with these properties as their second best option, maybe. But there are great opportunities there, because if you make a good impression, they'll come to love what you offer and potentially come back again and again and again. So I just see it as a very valuable opportunity. I wanted to ask you all collectively, the new relationships, the unexpected relationships are built now at a time when everyone's feeling in need of a break, quite vulnerable emotionally, and will be very receptive to a positive hospitality experience. How are you going to maintain that relationship? How will you strengthen it? And how will you capitalize on it in the years to come? So maybe from an outsider perspective, Charlotte, what would you recommend to the industry?
Thank you. And it's a terrific question, and you've summarised it beautifully. This is going to be one of the most memorable and most needed holidays, and subsequently it's going to be one of the most talked about holidays and most shared as well. So the opportunity couldn't be better. And I think you've just got to create memorable memories. Make this the holiday that people do talk about, how they reconnected with family, they had this wonderful walk. I always think about that lovely Maya Angelou quote, that people forget what you say and what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think this is the space now, is this is a really emotional connection, really kind of think about feelings and what your guest needs right now, preempt that, surprise them, give them fun, give them an opportunity to relax, to forget about COVID, and find ways of celebrating the many missed, weddings, graduations, holidays that they haven't been able to take. So I think really kind of create memories, and then build long-term relationships and communities by connecting.
Well, that's exactly it. So building long-term relationship, what do you do next after they've had that great holiday?
To me or to everyone else?
Actually, I'll pass on to Andrew, because we're running out of time. And I will also ask Ross and Lydia.
Yeah, I think, for us, the only way to do it is to when they're with us, to make sure the experience they've had is one they want to repeat. I think everyone's changed their habits during COVID, and therefore it's a great opportunity for them to form new habits. But as for us, I say our purpose is to make every guest want to return, and our team are empowered to do so. And that people are very fickle. Guests are very fickle these days, and therefore, if they've had a great experience, they'll want to come back. And then the rest of the time, it's about keeping in touch with people. But I don't think you can force it. If you've delivered a great experience, they'll come back. If you haven't, they won't do it again.
Fair enough. What are your thoughts on that, Ross?
Yeah, I guess look, repeat clients are absolutely vital to any business, and for us, once you get them hooked in and understanding what you do and what you deliver in your specialist knowledge, there's no better form of client. So, in getting them to experience our UK itineraries, really will give them a feel for the sorts of things we do abroad. So, and to Charlotte's point, creating those memories, what we try and do is just find those little nuggets of information that client is looking for and tailor-made specifically and personalize a trip around them. Now that can just be in the UK, but then it just broadens that horizon to how far we can do that globally. And really, once you get that client in and you understand what they're looking for, whether it's a fine wine or a particular type of dish, whatever their appeal might be, then we just try and take that on a longer journey to future destinations.
Thank you. And what have you got to say, Lydia?
I mean, I think, unfortunately, there's no magic wand, and I agree completely with Andrew and Ross, that it's all about the quality of the experience they have, and make sure that they're having this great intimate service, top quality offering, and really feeling like they are at home or at home away from home. And hopefully with the British market, that gives an opportunity of a lot of word of mouth marketing, and take it from there. But I mean, you've just got to offer. I think people have a good experience, they'll come back. They'll tell their friends to come back.
Thank you, Lydia. I'm just going to rapidly take a few quick fire questions from some of the audience. Matt Vines, thank you, asks Lydia, John, or Andrew, or me, but I'll just leave it to you and to Andrew and Lydia. Thoughts on what hotels in London can do to increase occupancy when the trend for the foreseeable future seems to be a desire to travel out of metropolitan areas? Who do you see as being the key target audience for London hotels, and will they appeal to Londoners wanting staycations, something I'd be up for personally, or people from other parts of the UK wanting to come into London? What do you think, Andrew?
I think cities in general, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about with Lydia and the Balmoral, actually, and I know it's in London, but there's no Edinburgh Festival this year. And I'm from Edinburgh. I love Edinburgh, but I personally wouldn't go during August because it is just, you can't move. It's an amazing festival, but you can't move. So I think there's an opportunity for people that, the cities are going to be quieter for the foreseeable future. And I think if we can sell the point that actually there aren't the same events that are going on. So actually, if you want to go, it's actually a really great time to go. And I think the other thing is, again, and this doesn't apply to all hotels, but like Brown's and Albemarle Street, we've got the 11 Cadogan Gardens in Chelsea and on Pavilion Road. They're in great areas, but they are slightly off the beaten track. And I think it's selling the fact that if you're not on a main thoroughfare, perhaps, that it's actually, you can have a London experience. But I think the main thing is pushing this whole idea of actually the cities are quieter than this. Will be the quietest summer on record.
Yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned not being on the main thoroughfare, because for me, as a Londoner of sorts, Park Lane might have an international prestige, but I think it's a terrible location. So being on Albemarle Street is actually a lot more attractive, particularly if you're doing these great summer restaurant festivals al fresco. That sounds really enticing. So I think there's opportunities there. Do you have anything additional to add to that, Lydia, about the urban opportunities?
No, I think that's right. I think especially offering really good cultural packages and access to museums and places that normally would be really busy. I mean, Balmoral last year was voted #1 British hotel, and now you don't have all of this international business. So it's a really good opportunity to be able to access without the queues, without the crowds. That personally excites me a lot. So I hope others as well.
Yeah, I would definitely be up for that type of holiday. I also see Anna Silva O'Reilly, Mrs. O Around the World, has made a similar comment that she hadn't even considered holiday in London, but it's a great idea. And I agree, it's a wonderful time to explore our capital and all the things it offers as it slowly opens up again. We're pretty much out of time. Just to rapidly finish everything off, this is all about rediscovering or discovering for the first time the best that Britain has to offer, and there's loads in store for us if we choose to explore it. I just want to ask you very succinctly, finally, Is there one little spot in Britain that you'd love to visit, or a place you'd like to highlight that people maybe might want to discover for themselves this summer? Andrew, is there anything you have in mind?
For me, either the west coast of Scotland or the Isles of Scilly is my happy place.
Great, thank you. What about yourself, Charlotte?
For me, it would be the Outer Hebrides. We had an amazing summer there last year, and particularly the Isle of Harris and beaches like Luscantar are absolutely out of this world beautiful.
Scotland's a winner, yeah. And yourself, Ross?
I'm a Dorset boy, born and bred, and love the Dorset coast. But rather than hitting the main sites, going somewhere slightly quieter towards Devon, sort of Lyme Regis way, there's some beautiful places down there. So, I mean, Scotland I'd love to go to, but I do enjoy parts of Dorset. You've just got to find those hidden beaches, and they do exist.
Thank you. And yourself, Lydia?
Well, if Cornwall will have us, my aunt has a hotel in Southampton where I haven't been since I was like literally 14 years old, and so hopefully that will be on my summer schedule.
This is the year to do it, isn't it? I'll indulge myself as well and just say, like 2020 was meant to be the year I was exploring England properly, all the places I've never been, and I've loved investigating all these little hamlets and villages and small towns that completely passed me by in years of writing about travel and do genuinely seem not that well known internationally, as far as I was aware. So I went to Wells in January, the smallest city in England with the most incredible cathedral. I mean, St. Paul's is around, but I was one of only 2 people exploring it. It was absolutely spectacular. And Rye is about 90 minutes from London and is just the prettiest, quaintest village. So the idea of exploring it this summer without huge crowds of international tour groups is a real luxury, isn't it? So I hope we'll all take advantage of those opportunities as they emerge. We are now out of time. I just want to say a really huge thanks to everyone who's very happy to speak. It was a very interesting discussion. I do think there's opportunities that are going to emerge this summer in the midst of all the chaos that we're dealing with. I welcome and encourage feedback from anyone who's in the audience. If there's additional webinar topics you'd like to have discussed or people you'd like to put forward, or any feedback more generally, please feel free to send me a line. And I hopefully will be in touch with everyone soon about what's next in store. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.